Before we get into the 9th episode of Progress With Us, I wanted to make a little introduction for today's video. I know a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say in this introduction will probably be covered in the podcast, but I feel like you as a viewer and a listener will benefit from me saying this. For those of you who have watched videos on my personal account or have watched previous podcast episodes, you will have heard me speak about my mentor, who is today's special guest. A good mentor should see more potential in you than you see in yourself. They should be able to help you get a plan together and execute it, but they should help you in fulfilling what you feel is your purpose. On my first call with Lee, I called him up and I told him that I didn't want to be at university anymore and that I also wanted to start a podcast with my friend. And 8 months later, Lee is our 9th guest on the show. I've visualized this moment for a very long time and I'm very proud to bring this episode to you guys. I hope you enjoy this episode, and without further ado, let's get into it. Lee Duncan, welcome to Progress With Us. This is a very, very special episode for myself. Yeah. Now, for anyone who is watching who doesn't know, Lee, you have been my mentor for just over 8 months now, I believe, or coming up to 8 months. And from meeting you, everything in my life just seems to have absolutely skyrocketed in the right direction. And it is such a pleasure to sit down with you. From the moment we started working together, I knew that one day you would be on this podcast, and here we are.
It's a pleasure to have you on today. I've heard good things as well.
I'm excited. Honestly, that's all I can say. And, it's been a pleasure working with yourself, Charlie, and it's been a pleasure to meet yourself as well. And I'm excited. And if there's anything that anyone can take from this podcast, if they can take a little bit of value or a golden nugget, then I believe that, job done. Job's a good one, as they say.
I think the reason I've been so excited for this is because we call every single week. And after every single call, I just think that was so valuable. And for me, this is an opportunity for me to show what I learned from you to all my peers and everyone who watches this. So I'm excited about this. Now, for people who aren't too familiar with what it is that you do, would you like to just explain a little bit about your business and your role?
Yeah, so I'll go back. I'll rewind the clock a little bit. So coming from a professional athlete background as a professional boxer, boxing all my life, to a university graduate, and I consider myself an entrepreneur rather than a business owner, and like to go across the board and be creative and think outside the box. And self-development is a big part of my life, and how can I be the best version of myself every day? And they say there's a certain sort of pyramid where when we listen, we only take in so much information. When we watch, we take in even more, but when we teach it, it becomes part of us. And that's one of the reasons why I developed the project of Mindset University, not also to help myself, but to help others as well. And it's a great project, and I know that we're building a strong community with it. So that's the exciting thing. And like you said, it's added value to your life, Charlie, and that's the main thing. And we go off that. We go off the feedback rather than measure anywhere else. We measure it off the feedback that we get. So
something that I wanted to roll back to is your career as an athlete. How do you think that's kind of impacted you on your development and self-development journey?
Oh, massively. But not only the boxing, it was the fact I had a great mentor, God bless him, in Brendan Ingle, MBE, who's a renowned Sheffield legend. Yeah. Actually was a pal of your dad's, obviously Irish background, everything else. And he took me in at 15 years of age, and nothing really was going right for me in any area of my life at that stage, from school, from personal life. And I found boxing, and I just felt that it was part of me. I felt that this was my way to channel certain energy, and I just had the feeling that this was something that was going to benefit me long term and benefit people around me as well with the person that I'll become. And I think sport is a great channel to do that for anybody, and I've seen it. I've seen it, and I know it works. Having people in from a young age with the right mentor, the right environment, around the right peer group, you will change, and that environment will change you forever.
So something about your story that when I first met you really captivated me is the fact that while you were doing your undergraduate degree, you were also a professional boxer. Now, either of those things individually, if we had someone who was our age who was a professional boxer, we'd be right behind them and impressed by them. And the fact that you were able to do that while studying an undergraduate degree, how were you able to balance the two things at the time?
It's a question that I get quite a lot, and I did it because I wanted to do it. One, I wanted to avenge my academia, from not fulfilling my potential at school. But something deep within me, I knew I could do it. So part of that reason I went back, and Brendan struck me a deal and he said, look, you've got to get your education or you can't come to the gym. That's the deal. And I said, okay, I'll just go back. I'll go back to school. I'll finish school out and I'll see what happens. But the change through boxing and the system and turning up every day and showing up to that positive environment enabled something in me to say, you know what, I've got a lot more to give. So then that's when it started. So before I knew it, I was building it as a cultural thing, as we were talking about the other day. I was getting up, I was training at 5 a.m. Then I was going to college or school. Then I was training again in the evening. Then I was getting in, finishing off a bit of work, going to bed. That was my life for years. So it was just something I did on a daily basis. And I get that question, how did you do it? I did it because I wanted to do it. If you want to do something, you'll find a way to do it.
I see a lot of people say that, in terms of like, how do you have the motivation? How do you have the discipline to do something?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the time doing something a lot turns into the discipline rather than thinking, oh, this is going to be the end goal, blah, blah, blah. The more you do something, it turns into your routine, if you know what I mean. And I don't know if that was something for you, or if just you from the start you were like, yeah, I'm going to just do this.
Yeah.
Or if it was kind of hard at the beginning, but and then through doing it endlessly, it turns into the routine, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do. And we can have two paths. We can either go down the great path or we can go down the other path. Both will give you a result depending on which way you go. And a habit is developed within the first 28 days, where you're on and off something, you're trying something, you can't seem to stick to it. That's the trial and error period. You've got to go beyond the 28-day mark, and it will take up to 90 days to build a culture in your nervous system so that you are programmed to do something. People rely on the motivational aspect. People rely on the discipline aspect. The problem is people don't really know what discipline means. People don't actually know what motivation means. When you do something so much over a 90-day period, you will go into without getting deep and confusing, but you'll go into something called culture, and that is the barometer where you'll start to make erratic change. Whereas if you don't do something you've been practicing for those 90 days, it'll start to feel unnormal. So that's the barrier you have to push through. So if you're going to the gym for 90 days, when you stop going, it's going to feel odd that you're not going.
Yeah, I always say that as well, especially with the gym. I feel like a lot of people at the beginning of their kind of journey to whatever they want to do is that getting used to the uncomfortable feeling of doing something that makes it kind of routine as well.
Exactly.
I want to run this back to a bit more of a personal level for me. So our story actually started in November of 2022.
Yes.
And I didn't start working with you until August of 2023. And I want to talk a bit about this because this was one of the kind of biggest breakthroughs for me when I started working with you. Now, when I first met you, and you were talking to me about mindset.
Yeah.
And mindset for me at the time felt like such a broad topic, like, you have to have the right mindset for things. Your outer reflects your inner. And for me at the time, I was just thinking, I just want to make money. I just want to make money. I had all these big ideas, and I just thought mindset, it didn't really, I couldn't really conceptualize what it meant. And it wasn't until I started working with you that I really understood the importance of your mindset. Why is having the right mindset a prerequisite to success in any endeavour in life?
Because it's transactional across anywhere in your life. You can put that across any area. You cover the full sphere. And one reason I say this is life's measured on 3 metrics. When you fall off the horse, how hard you hit the ground, and also how quick you can get back on. Meaning, in life, you're going to hit a wall at some point. You're going to hit a challenge. Are you prepared and ready for when that challenge occurs? And how are you going to turn that around? I'll give you an example. In sport, boxing, and life, if we get knocked off the horse, a lot of people don't end up getting back on the horse because they think that's the end. Now, to me, that's a chink in someone's armour. Just like if someone wants to take a shortcut, whether they're doing drugs, drinking alcohol, taking steroids, we see that as a chink in someone's armor. Being an athlete, when you walk into a gym, it's like jumping into the ocean full of sharks. You're getting weighed up as soon as you walk in, okay? Some may bump you, some may just swim around you. You know, you're being watched, basically. They're looking for chinks in your armor immediately. If you don't have the right mindset for sport, if you don't have the right mindset for your career, if you don't have the right mindset for education and life, what else do you have? It's a self-development process, and a lot of people don't click onto this till mid-30s. Then they start looking into self-development when they think, well, I've got a lot more to give. There's a lot more to life. What am I missing? So by being an athlete, I've learned through my time, mindset is the most important thing, because if you lose your title and you don't come back, why? Why have you not come back? You've not overcome the trials and tribulations that come with that. Because when you go on the road to success, there's consequences, there's hurdles, as we all know, there's brick walls. You've got to have the right mindset to critique your approach to overcome those. And that's why the element of mindset is important. And a lot of people are not going to understand it, because a lot of people haven't done their research or their homework, or they're probably not aware of having to actually work on the mindset.
Something that you said to me very early on is that people will, you know, a lot of people go to the gym, right? A lot of people will exercise, they'll do a sport, etc., etc. And they will take time out of their day every single day to work on their physicality.
Yes.
But very few people take time out of their day to work on their mental state. Now, you live inside of your own mind 24/7, 7 days a week, for every single day that you are alive on this planet.
Yeah.
Why is it that you think so many people put so much emphasis on their physicality as opposed to their mentality?
Again, people think that they can go and change the external. Now, the external world only changes when we change the internal, which, as you mentioned earlier on, is the prerequisite to your external. Whatever's going on externally is a direct reflection of what's happening internally. A lot of people go out and get frustrated when they're frowning in the mirror and the mirror's frowning back, and they're asking why it's not smiling. And this is what one of my mentors explained. And a lot of people will take out a pen and they'll draw a smiley face on the mirror, and they'll get pissed off because it's not a genuine smile. So, meaning, once you configure your internal, the external follows, because the internal is the prerequisite.
And define internal and external for me. So internal is your mindset and your mental state, and your external is kind of the results that you're getting and the things that you're doing.
Okay, so the internal dialogue, how you show up, and to get a little bit deeper, how you show up to anything is going to determine how you project something into the universe, how you project something into that environment. If you turn up happy, if you turn up positive, if you turn up confident, if you turn up ready, if you turn up like the best version of you, how is the environment going to reflect? It's going to reflect that. If you turn up negative, if you turn up down, if you turn up frustrated, pissed off, at some point, the universe has no option but to reflect back the person that you've turned up as. That's why do you think a lot of people who have a lot of good things going for them, it's just one thing after the next? Oh, that's going good. Oh, they get another good thing, because they're turning up as that person. So we always say, be, do, then you become. You've got to be the person. And I'll take it back to boxing. Going into the gym as though you are a champion, you'll do what a champion does. Finally, you become a champion. Same in university. The title or the degree or the status quo from a job is only the public verification. You were that person before you got the public verification. That's the internal. The external is the public verification.
I feel like someone who really popularised that concept within that will reflect with our age group is Conor McGregor, with the videos of him talking about how he knew he was going to be champion and he'd imagined it. And when he won the title, he knocked out the champion of 10 years in 13 seconds. And he said that he had imagined that punch 1,000 times before. And that I feel like he popularized visualization and the power that that can have among people of our age group.
It's a real thing.
I was going to say, for people who are maybe working on their physicality and they're conquering that to a certain extent, but they're struggling internally in terms of like conquering their mind, their thoughts, and trying to just become one with all that, what would your kind of advice be to those people?
Go and work on your mindset first. Go and do the internal work, because it's like this. How many people do we know who maybe, you know, struggling with their diet, struggling with their weight, struggling, what are we now, towards the end of January, right? How many people set off in January saying, right, I'm going to do this? How many people right now who will watch this video back think, well, I fell off ages ago. That's not because of the best ModCon kit that you bought. It's like going into the gym and having the ModCon kit. Well, I'm going to join this gym because it's got the best equipment, it's got the best stuff, it's got the best everything. That becomes irrelevant if you don't use it. By biometric, you're not taking action. You've got to take action. Now, the question what you proposed to me when you said, what would you say to someone who's constantly focused on the physical rather than the internal, is go away and start to do the internal work, because the physical work will take care of itself. And I say that because how many people are walking around struggling on drugs, maybe, so obesity in America is out of control. It's not hard to access information in this day and age to help you with an issue that you may be going through. What's stopping people is something going on internally. Because it's very much accessible on our fingertips. So why aren't people accessing what they can? There's an internal blockage that they're not dealing with that is holding them back from proceeding to the result that they want.
To follow on from what you've just said, right, is that there isn't a lack of knowledge out there. There is just some internal problems, right? And I feel like this was one of the biggest things that you did for me, is that I had all these big plans, right? And like you said, there was no lack of knowledge out there for me to go and get them done. But for me, I felt like I just didn't know where to start. I feel like starting is the hardest part with anything, because you don't know what you don't know. To start not knowing anything, it can just feel like an endless cycle of, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it, so I'm not going to do it. And I think people probably don't have a problem of not knowing what to do, and they know exactly what they need to do, but it's that, are you strong enough to hold yourself accountable, or do you need someone else to hold you accountable? And for me, I had to outsource that to you, because you helped me reverse engineer it and then hold me accountable. So why is it, let me rephrase this. How important do you think it is to have someone to hold you accountable when starting out with things like this?
It's incredibly important that you have someone holding you accountable, because it makes sure that you turn up. Today, you guys held me accountable to turn up. Did I turn up on time? And on time, I mean early. Yes, I was early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable, right? We know that, all right? So, kidding aside, so why people do this, and let's break it down into two sections here. The first one, information, all right? Application, implementation. Information, everyone can go to university, plenty of information. It's on hand. That's not the problem. Application, and by information, that's data collection. All right? Brainstorming, knowing what to do. Application, getting the resources ready and the designs ready or whatever, and critiquing what you need to critique and perfecting it and all this kind of stuff. Implementation, only 10% of people get to the implementation part, but that's the most important part, because that is the part that counts when you implement it. Most people want the strength before doing the reps. It doesn't work like that, as you know. You're a big gym advocate, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Can you pick up the heaviest weight in the gym first walking in the gym on your first day? Probably not. You have to build up through your reps. A lot of people don't do the repetitions. That comes through self-development and internal work, because that's the prerequisite. A lot of people sit in front of a fire and want the heat without putting the logwood on first.
Yeah.
And that's where we go wrong.
You said earlier that when we were talking about physicality and mindset, that people need to start doing the internal work. For someone who doesn't work with the likes of yourself or a mindset mentor, what is one of the most powerful, maybe an exercise or an actionable step that you can do to actually get started with working on your mindset? Because a lot of people might just think like, I need to read a book or whatever else. But is there, if you had one golden entry ticket to working on your mindset, what would that be?
Right. So a lot of people start with trying to use a strategy. But as you mentioned earlier, Charlie, the problem is people don't know how to do something. So they try and configure a strategy. You don't have to know how. A lot of people don't know how they're going to do something. You don't know how you're going to win that title. You don't know how you're going to get to where you want to get. The how figures itself out as you go. The first thing you've got to do, because a lot of people go to a strategy first. Well, I've got to put a strategy together for this. But then, I don't know how to do it. So then they never get started. There's a 3-step process to this. Tony Robbins taught me this. Brendan Ingle taught me this. And people will only realize this when I actually explain it, what I'm going to explain. First, you have to get into a state of doing something, a state through physiology, through emotional backing, that you're now in the state. Athletes, before they get in the ring, they put themselves in a certain state before going on to perform. Same with musicians. You ask any musician, you ask any athlete, they put themselves in a certain state before they go on stage to perform.
I've heard public speakers talk about this a lot, that they get themselves... In fact, I actually think it was a podcast with Tony Robbins and George Janko that I saw the other day, where Tony Robbins was talking about this process that he has before he goes on stage.
Yeah, exactly. So you put yourself in the state. Then it's the story that you give yourself and you tell yourself. And then it's the strategy that comes. So I ask a lot of people, what story do you have that you tell yourself? Do you get up every morning and say, well, I'm not good enough. I don't feel loved. I don't feel good enough. I don't feel I can achieve it. I don't feel that I can get there. Because that story you tell yourself will create your identity, and your identity will then govern your life in a certain direction.
So to get into that state, would you say that something? Sorry, I'm going to rephrase that again.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Something that I use as a bit of a framework is I just imagine the person who I want to be. And sometimes when I'm struggling to make decisions, or you don't want to do something, I just think like, what would that Charlie do? So to put yourself in that state, or to change the story that you tell yourself, would you say that that's probably a good place to start? Is to think about what would the version of you that you want to be like, what would they do? Don't leave it down to you. Ask them. So what would you do? Would you get up at this time? Would you go to the gym?
Look, thoughts create emotions. Emotions will create feelings. Feelings are going to create the way you do things. All right, and that's why sometimes it's not, reliable to rely on feelings as such. But let me ask you this: have you ever felt like really tired, or thought you were tired, got to the gym, started working out, and thought, actually, I'm feeling good now? You're putting yourself into a state. It's a different state than before you went in. You with me?
Yeah.
So what have you done there? You've transitioned from feeling tired and telling yourself some story to putting yourself in an environment around other peer groups, around different energy that's changed your state. Hence, if you hang around with people who are shy and who have low confidence, eventually that's going to become your state. So you're going to show up like that. If you hang around with people who are highly confident, who are winners, who want to be successful, like me when Brendan moved me into a house full of other boxers, the norm was to go to when I was boxing amateur at the time, the norm was like, I was like, well, I'm going to win this fight. But then the other champions in the house were like, well, you should win this competition. The standard was different. The conversation was different. It was about winning.
Would you say there was a certain point where you kind of, something flicked in your mind and you realised this about state, maybe when you were boxing or something like that, or was it kind of like a gradual process?
It's been a gradual process for me over many years, and I've had my challenges, I've had my setbacks, but without curating my mindset and being prompted to do that through your setbacks and challenges, then that's where it started for me, and the building blocks. Because if you were to see me at 15 and the kid that I was then to who I am now, it's totally different. And that's through the journey, and that's through development, and that's working on myself every single day since I was 15 years old. And that's how you've got to show up. And having that mindset, and like I say, I commend athletes, especially my background in boxing, because I've met some terrific fighters, I've met some terrific people in boxing, and boxers have one of the most fundamental, amazing mindsets from what they do and what they go through. And the fighting's actually the easy part. It's what they do and the repetition, the setbacks, and having that tenacity and being so tenacious to overcome challenges and still want to win in the worst circumstances possible, in or out of the ring. So that's my commend. I commend boxers. I always love boxers. I love seeing boxers overcome and win and get through things and win at life, because it makes me happy. It makes me a part of that community, because without actually getting in a ring, nobody actually will ever know or understand that feeling. And to say that that's the hardest thing and the most challenging thing that I've ever been able to do, and actually do it and win a title out of it, what did that do for my confidence? What did that do for me? That told me, and that was my verification. Whoa, I can go on and do anything.
The majority of the audience who are watching will probably be a similar age to myself and Jacob. And I know that you've worked with a lot of young people who are around my age, perhaps a bit younger, perhaps a little bit older. What are some of the things with the younger mentees that you have that you see that really hold them back at the start?
Worrying about what other people think of them. Worrying about judgment. And that comes when you peel back the onion. It's not actually, I'm not scared of putting this photo out. It's actually, if you look and peel back, maybe go back to childhood, has that person been or felt, I'm not saying they have been, but have they felt at any point of abandonment? And by abandonment, that might be an extreme word, but have this person got other siblings that maybe the attention wasn't directed to them because they had to share, the parents had to share the attention amongst maybe 4 or 5 different siblings. So at any point, if this person feels that their self-worth is at threat, by putting out a bit of content and have people judge them for it, that will make them feel disconnected. So a lot of the time, I see people are scared to do something, not because they worry about the quality of their work that they do, because a lot of people do very good quality work, and a lot of people are very, very talented, and a lot of people are very, very intelligent. But what holds them back is the worrying about the opinions of other people. And I guarantee once you get over that, the weight will be off your shoulders and you can go out and live your life, and your best life.
I mean, you're right. I mean, for me, at the time of recording this is my Project Kaizen day 5. And on Monday, we have been discussing since, I don't know, maybe my birthday in December about talking about personal brand and content. And it took me until the 22nd of January to put something out. But after putting it out, before, I've been putting it off for so long. Yeah. And after doing it, I just thought, right, all that fuss was for what? But it was getting to that point took me a while. And, I even have you to help me. So I think that thing about caring what other people think is definitely something that young people like us suffer from. So if you were to give people who are maybe want to do something, a piece of advice about not caring about what other people think, what would that piece of advice be? Okay,
so one reason why you shouldn't be scared about what other people think is because it's only in the mind of your own. So they are building an illusion in their head and a story in their head, in their own mind, of what they think other people are thinking about them, or the consequence of doing something and them being judged by the other person. When actually what they'll find is if they go ahead and do it, the response will be totally different that they get. They'll probably help someone in the same circumstance that was probably thinking the same thing, and other people will be inspired by the content that they've produced and put out there. So they're actually, if you make it about others and you make it about the audience and you add value and you genuinely want to help and add value, there's nothing wrong with that because people appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that is for sure true. I know even before we started the podcast, I'm sure it was a feeling for both of us of, I don't know, it's a complete change, innit? Putting ourselves out there, talking to people. Yeah. But as soon as the first episode was out, it kind of broke the barrier. And after that, you just feel, I don't know, it feels like normal, and the feedback we got was actually so good from everybody as well.
There you go. And I didn't know that, and by you guys taking action, building this, you've probably inspired other people, and people say, oh, you know, I was thinking about doing a podcast myself, I didn't know where to start. Hey, I'll ask you guys, and you guys would be able to tell them where to start and what to do, because a lot of people out there will want to do a podcast but just don't know where to start because they're thinking too much about the strategy and not actually going out and doing it. So distinguishing that, it just changes the game. And let me just give another quick example. So when someone walks into a restaurant or a bar, or you meet someone for the first time, often than not, person A and person B are each worried about what they think of each other. So if I walk into a room and I'll be person A, Jacob, you be person B, before I get to that room, I'm worried about what Jacob's going to think of me. And this is only an example, guys. I'm not saying this is a real thing. I'm just giving it for you guys. So I'm worried about what Jacob thinks about me. So I'm there worried, not knowing in my own mind that Jacob's also worried about what I think of him. So he's worried about himself, I'm worried about myself. Then the whole concept has become obsolete because he wasn't worried about what I was, he was worried about what I was thinking. But at the end of the day, we've got to turn up as our best self rather than worrying about what someone else is thinking. Because he wasn't thinking anything anyway.
I want to also talk about this because I'm not sure if this is something that you've spoken about before. I mean, I've watched some of your podcasts before, maybe not all.
Yeah.
But when did you actually start mentoring people? And when did you set up Mindset University and take that decision to, you know, teach what you've learned over the years?
So this was an ongoing project for a fair few years. So, you know, the last 5 years. And the last couple of years, I was really gaining some interest and people just reaching out and asking me about boxing, education, because most people either do sport or education. Obviously, I've been fortunate enough to do both, and then others who do entrepreneurship. So they're like, oh, well, I want to do this. How do I do? So I would just started off giving people advice and guidance and maybe telling them the do's and don'ts and the mistakes that I did. And it sort of developed into a project from there. So, you know, the last, I'd say 3 years, 2 to 3 years, and then the last sort of 5 years of, you know, really sort of having them conversations.
Because I saw you put up a post, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, that it was like a Sunday or a Saturday, and you said that was the first Sunday that you'd taken off Mindset University calls for two or 3 years. It was, and you know, it's something that I enjoy, and it's something that I'm passionate about, and it's something that I've lived. You know, it's not something. It's a little bit like this. Like I get people and I see people on social media talking about ice baths, for example, talking about different things to do with your body. But my question is, okay, so has that person performed? What level have they performed at by using ice baths and one thing or another? And how has it worked for you, and what result have you got? If they haven't performed at a professional level or a championship level like I have, and I've used saunas, and I know for a fact that saunas work better than ice baths, his argument has then become flawed because he hasn't done that. So my point is, you've got to be around someone who's lived it, who's experienced it, who's been through it, and that's what a great mentor is. And I see myself as a mindset mentor in the fact that I've got experience where a lot of people don't have by being an athlete, by being educated at a red brick university and obtaining a master's degree at the same time simultaneously. So I feel it's my obligation and duty to help other people become the best version of themselves. Because if I'd have not stepped into the boxing club at a young age and met Brendan Ingle, I wouldn't be the person that I've curated today. And like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say my life is perfect and I don't have setbacks. I just want to be real and say I have setbacks, I have challenges, but I've curated myself in a way where I can overcome them and find a way. And that's just come through sport. Yeah. We spoke to a good friend of yours, Johnny Nelson,
yes.
A few years back. And obviously you were both mentored by Brendan Ingle. Yeah. And we spoke to this about Johnny, and I'd love to get your opinion on it as well. Absolutely. But something about Brendan is that a lot of people refer to him as their mentor and not their coach. And at the end of the day, he was a boxing coach. What is it about Brendan that was so special? Because he had such an incredible impact on so many people, especially where we're from in Sheffield. Yeah. What was it about Brendan that just made him different?
Look, I you had to see it, you had to be there to see it and believe it. But, you know, I saw some kids walk in that gym, and the greatest success stories are, believe it or not, and some of the best fighters are fighters that you never heard of or probably didn't even turn pro. You know, because they just never took themselves on that break, or they veered off, or something happened in their personal life, they stopped coming to the gym. But Brendan would take someone with no talent, literally, who'd never stepped foot in a gym. And I observed this, and I observed this a lot with a lot of different people, because I was there, 20 years, something like that, long time. Someone walk in there with no talent, not know anything, not know their left foot from their right hand, like, and then become a boxer, start fighting amateur, winning championships, turning pro, winning titles. How does that work? We all have physicality. And this one thing Brendan said, you know, if I'm strong, you're strong. If you're clever, I'm clever. If I can switch hit, you can switch hit. What's going to make us different? It's what's going on in here. Everybody's fit in sport. Everybody's fit. Everybody's strong. What separates you? It's the mindset. So that's the fundamental. So Brendan would literally start to brainwash you in a good way to be a fighter, but not only in the ring, because a lot of coaches do, and I'm not saying it's the job of the coach to deal with someone else's personal life, but the job of your boxing coach is to teach you how to box and to prevent you from getting hurt, because boxing is a serious game. It's a dangerous game. You know, I've seen a lot of people get damaged in boxing, and that's an accumulation over years of getting hit to the head. And one of Brendan's fundamentals was he told everyone who come in the gym, this game is it's not one of the hardest sport, it's the hardest sport. And I used to think, no, it can't be. I've done every sport, I've done a lot of sports. It is the hardest. It is one of the hardest. Well, not one of, it is the hardest. And you've got to be on the ball in boxing. You can't be an idiot, and you can't have idiots training you. And these were all words of Brendan. And over the years, it started to make sense. Little things he'd say would come true, and I'd think, I remember Brendan saying something about that. I remember Brendan giving advice to this kid about that, and it happened, or something. So you've really got to be on the ball. So Brendan would actually build someone up brick by brick to succumb to the challenges, to create a great attitude, because you have to have a good attitude in boxing. Because you know your attitude will determine your altitude, and your attitude comes with gratitude. So having and appreciating you know, that level of mentorship you're going to get from someone like Brendan, and I appreciate it every day. Like, I got to the gym, I'll give you an example, and the first day I got there, he was like, right, what we're going to do, we all go out litter picking every other day. And I'm thinking, I'm like, Brendan, I've come to box. I don't want to litter pick. Like, litter picking. I'm thinking, what? And then I'm seeing like champions like helping out, like litter picking. I'm thinking, this is a bit odd. So he's got, you know, we've gone out litter picking, and then, you know, people saying, oh, good job, oh, where are you from? And you just make conversation with people walking past in the area. And then, you know, before you know it, like, people know you in the area, they see your face, and then you go around, you're picking up the litter on the street. Some people will throw litter down next to you, and some people will tell you you're doing a good job. But the attitude behind that means everything. Because if you react to someone throwing litter down next to you, how are you going to react in life when someone doesn't maybe agree with you? And eradicating insecurities and building a great attitude is the key to gaining your success or gaining a result that you want. And that's it.
It does sound really interesting when you hear these stories about Brendan, because it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a direct approach of like, right, you're in the gym now, you need to start doing X, Y, and Z. It seems like it was a really slow, gradual process. But by the end of it, and something that I want to come back to as well, is what separated the people who didn't get what Brendan was saying from the people who did, and why did some people get it and why did some people not get it?
Because some people heard, but some people didn't listen. So hearing and listening are two different concepts. I listened to everything Brendan said. I listened to him. Even when he wasn't talking to me, I was listening to what he was saying to other people. And a lot of it came true, what he used to tell people. Hence, if you smoke, you drink, you do drugs, you gamble, you tell lies, you rip people off, you're going to have problems. If you have one woman, you're going to have your challenges and problems. If you have two women at once, you're going to have plenty of problems, right? He used to say this thing, and I'm like, and then over time, you start to see in life, that's what's happening. So if you go off the radar as a fighter and you start to dabble in any of that stuff, you know, things are not going to go right for you, not just in boxing, but in life. So by him holding you accountable to that level and making sure you focus, he's also doing his job that you're not going to get hurt in the sport. Because don't forget, you know, there's been a few incidents where fighters have ended up brain damaged, and you know that, or ended up in a coma and can't walk again and everything else. Like, if you guys look at me, a lot of people don't seem to think that I've been a boxer in my life. I know people say, oh, you're still an ugly bastard. Maybe looking at my face, you probably can't tell I've been a boxer for 20 years, but a lot of people you can. And one of Brendan's philosophies was, well, don't get hit. Develop a style where you don't get hit, where you're on the defensive, because also you've got a life after boxing as well. You know, and when you're in boxing and you're young, nothing else matters. You just want to be immersed in that sport. You want to be immersed in that environment. You don't think about the later years. So everything that Brendan said was a setup for your life.
How much of what you do now do you feel is influenced by Brendan and what you learned from him?
A lot of it, and a lot of it is, you know, whatever situation or dealing with people. Like, you deal with a lot of different personalities, you deal with a lot of people. Like you said, when I came in, you seem very chilled, very laid back. This is not an act. This is who I am. You know, a lot of people say that. They say, Lee, you always seem pretty laid back. You seem very relaxed. That's just the way I am. That is my demeanor. And that's something that I've developed over time. So that's something that I can carry anywhere I go and make people feel comfortable and bring the best out of them, as well as me giving them my best. So Brendan, you know, taught me how to deal with certain situations, environments, attitudes, think outside the box, you know, not go out and destroy my life on drugs, drink and alcohol, and use that as a go-to to deal with problems. No, it's not the answer. A lot of people do. A lot of people have a hard day at work. I go and have a sauna. I don't go to the pub and drink. Now, all these have been developed as habits and culture through the years, and that one of those was developed by Brendan. I've got other mentors, and I've had other mentors along the way who's, you know, mentored me for different things, but my first ever mentor was Brendan.
So obviously he's had a massive impact on you, which kind of leads me to, it's quite, I guess, a broad question, but it's for people who maybe don't know too much about mentorship. I just want to know what mentorship itself means to you.
Mentorship itself, what it means to me is having someone come and show you the person that you can become and the potential that you have. A lot of people just work to their current ability. I'll just do enough. They go to a job and they just do enough to get by for the day, and then they'll go home. All right, when you go to bed and your head hits the pillow that night, are you satisfied? Are you truly satisfied of the output you've given that day? Probably not, if you're just doing just enough. If you're turning up and reaching your potential and being that best version of you every day and putting yourself through challenge and going for those bigger challenges, a lot of people will go where they're comfortable, because comfortable is familiar. Comfortable is certainty. People don't like uncertainty. They like to go to certainty because it's comfortable. The boxing gym, why I went every day, do you think it was comfortable sparring world champions like Johnny Nelson? No, it's very hard. When I first sparred Johnny Nelson, and I'm thinking I'm good, I thought I was good. I wasn't champion at the time, by the way. I was probably 2 or 3 pro fights in. Brendan said, oh, I want you to spar Johnny. I sparred Johnny for the first, 2 or 3 amateur fights in. I sparred Johnny, and there's me thinking that, oh, I'm decent now, I know how to box. I got in with Johnny, who was 7 years reigning world champion, and I sparred Johnny Nelson. That was a shock to my system. He was making me make mistakes just by mimicking me and feinting, and I was like, whoa, there's levels. When you get in and you get to a certain level, and that level is exposed to you, it takes you in a completely different headspace.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So
Would you say then that people should go and actively search out for a mentor, or that where they are in their life and what they're doing, if they're kind of starting to go along a good route, then it will come to them? Because even like you guys, obviously you met in the sauna, was it? Is that the way before?
Yeah.
And then
So,
a lot of people
sauna,
tend to have big like impacts through the sport that they're doing, or like something along those lines. So would you say actively going out and searching for it, or would you say it will come to you at some point?
I always like to say it does come to you, because we all know that famous saying, seek and you shall find. And it's like going down a garden path. Once you set off on the journey, you are going to see different plants towards the rose bush at the bottom of the garden, which is the eighth wonder of the world, call it. On your way, you're going to see other flowers, you're going to see other plants, and you're going to enjoy the journey, you're going to enjoy the view. It's like through my career in boxing, through my career in university, I've enjoyed the journey as well. It's not just the end. You've got to enjoy life. You've got to enjoy life every day as well. So when you're enjoying life and you're seeking for more and you're seeking your potential, it's going to find you eventually. Something's going to happen and come to fruition. Once you start to look for something, you'll see it. And I'll give you another example. Tony Robbins taught me this. So I was at the Tony Robbins event, front row, which was one of my goals actually for 2023, to sit front row at a Tony Robbins event, which I did. And I got that. I fulfilled that.
Is he as big as everyone says he is?
He's massive. His hands, I remember shaking his
man.
hand. No, I went to fist bump him, and just his hand came over and it sort of went like that. I was like, what? And my hands are pretty big. So, what was I saying? He said, okay, we're going to do this exercise. Everyone sit up straight in our chairs, and we all sat up. And he says, right, what I want you to do is I want you to all look behind you. So everyone was like, look behind us. And then he said, so what did we see? And everyone said, people. Saw someone sat behind us because we expected to see that. He says, right, now, what I want you to do is when you look behind you, I want you to spot everything that's red. So we turned around and I saw red. I saw people with red scarves, red glasses, red earrings, red rings, red books, pens, and I saw red everywhere. And I was like, so he said, right, turn around. And then he says, right, now I want you to spot everything that's brown. So turn around. What did I start to see? Things that were brown, people's tops, people's hair, people's glasses again, everything. So when he said, do you know how this works? It's called the RAS, reticular activating system, in our brain. Whatever we focus on, we start to see. That was a game changer. If your focus is on stress, negativity, problems, that's what you're going to see. If you're focused on potential, being the best version of you, fulfillment, that's what you're going to get.
I think on our first ever call together, I actually put a video on about this yesterday, about my book of wins. And the first thing that you said to me on our first call was together was just start to notice the things that are going well. And I just had that book lying around. It was a 2023, 2024 book. And I was like, right, what I'll do is I'll just write down everything in that book that went well that day. And I made a video on it yesterday that today will actually be the 176th day that I've written in that book. Wow. And if you go through it, I've written in that book every single day without fail. And that is an exercise that I will never fail to do. But coming back to your point about focusing on the wins, is that at the end of every single month, what that book gives me is it gives me a documentation of everything that I have done in that month. Yeah. And at the end of the month, what I'll do is I'll go back through the book from the 1st till the 31st, if there's 31 days, and I will write down on an A4 piece of paper the best things that have happened in that month. Okay. And then I'll just write at the bottom, so are you happy with it? And the answer is always yes. But I feel like this might just be something that is a character trait of myself, but I find it a lot easier to be hard on myself than to praise myself. And having that kind of documentation and being able to look back on it and just think, you know what, you're doing all right. You're doing all right.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time we can end up on the wrong track in life, and a lot of people are on the track of achievement, which this is what I've learned through one of my mentors. A lot of people chase achievements, then they get the achievement and they're like, oh, that's worn off, so let's go on to the next achievement. Oh, that's worn off, let's go on to the next achievement. One reason why I went to fulfill boxing is because I'm fulfilled from boxing, because I went and did it. I'm not there saying what if. Boxing to me wasn't an achievement, it was a fulfillment. Fulfillment is different from achievement. I meet people who've achieved a lot and they're like, oh, I wish I'd have boxed when I was younger. I wish I'd have done this. I wish I'd have been a footballer or whatever. They've achieved, but they're not fulfilled. Fulfillment is going to bring you a lot more success long term, because when you go on a path of fulfillment, you're looking. Your reticular activating system is looking. You're looking for fulfillment. You're looking for things that will fulfill you, not just a tick box. Because the problem with the tick box is you're on the greyhound track chasing that white rabbit that can't be caught, because it's designed not to be caught, right?
Yeah.
Because when the greyhounds start closing in on the little white rabbit on a greyhound racetrack, they speed up the white rabbit because it's an illusion. So the dogs are just like happy to run the race, even though they didn't catch the white rabbit. And the person that they've become doing that is much greater than actually catching the white rabbit. They're just like running the race, right?
What would you say for people then who are kind of on that path to fulfillment and they may end up being super high achievers or whatever, but they finally get to the position and the place where they think originally they thought like, yeah, I'm going to be fulfilled at this point, but now they're there and they're like, yo, I've achieved everything I wanted to, but like, what do I do now? I don't feel fulfillment in my life at all.
So one of my other projects is helping businesses with their well-being initiatives. And what we see a lot of the time is whether the CEO of that business or whatever, they've focused so much on running the business, they've forgot about their health. So then they spend all the time now catching up on their health that's been and had a massive impact and deteriorated over the years. So they've been on the track of achievement, ticking all the boxes on their balance sheet or their financial forecast sheet, but on their life balance sheet, it's in debt.
I guess to a degree it goes back to what you were saying about the external and internal as well, but I guess the physicality in this case is business rather than your actual physical self.
Yes, and this is important that I've got to say, because when you put something into something so much and you're focused on that and you're focused on the external, what you've done is outsourced your identity and self-worth wrapped around that external thing or business or whatever, and you're tied to that. When you work on yourself from an internal perspective, if that happens to fail or the challenge goes wrong or you're really challenged by it or something doesn't go your way, you're able to rebuild from this because your self-worth is not tied to that. A lot of people tie their self-worth to job titles. The problem with a job title is if you're fired from your job or that job's no longer available and the title's no longer belongs to you, then that affects people's self-worth where they think, well, my self-worth is now low. So what happens when your self-worth drops? Everything else in your life will drop as well. If you can keep your self-worth high in any circumstance, eventually the external will rise up and meet your internal anyway.
I think what you were talking about with working with CEOs is really interesting. The president of the UFC, Dana White, has recently undergone like a massive health transformation. And if you look at him, he's built one of the biggest sporting promotions in the world. And if you look back on videos of him, he looked like he was going to pop. Like he's bright red, he's really overweight. And if you look at him now, he's in shape, but that took him, he's been running the UFC since before we were born. It took him 30 years this year to get his health in order. And a lot of people also say, when I'm... Sorry, go on, carry on with what you were saying.
Yeah, and I mean, people don't need to do that. They don't need to have a detrimental effect to their health just to build a business, because if they do the internal work, their business will flourish anyway. They'd probably build a better and bigger business if their health and everything else was in order and their well-being was in order. A lot of people turn up, they get up, they're woken by a crazy alarm in the morning, they get up, they rush out of bed, they rush around, they put their clothes on, they rush to work. Their focus is on the wrong things because they haven't done anything to work on themselves immediately in the morning and set themselves up to win. So winning for them is going to be a lot harder when they turn up to a place of work if they haven't took time out for their own well-being.
Yeah.
Because well-being is part of your internal process. You've got to make sure that you fundamentally coordinate that the right way, because if you do it wrong for so long, let's go back to the habit stacking, or the habit curve as they call it. You're on the red road, you're going down. So the more you do that over a 90-day cycle, the harder it is going to be for yourself to change that, because once something is wired and pre-programmed into your nervous system, it's very, very difficult to remove that, what people call habit. And a lot of people don't understand what a habit is. They think, oh, I smoke, that's a bad habit. It's not a habit. Smoking is an addiction. Drinking is an addiction. It's totally different from a habit. And it can become culture, like I said, over and after the 90-day cycle.
So why do you refer to the 90-day period?
Because it takes 90 days to program something into your nervous system. That's the number of days it will take for you to do something consecutively over and over again for 90 days. And that can be good or bad. That can be good. It can work with a good habit you want to form or a bad habit you want to form. So, for example, if you ran every day for 90 days, on the 90th day, if you didn't run on the 91st day, it'd feel weird. You'd feel like, oh, there's something missing out of my day, because you're programmed to do it. It doesn't matter the feeling, doesn't matter the weather, doesn't matter how far you have to park away from the gym. You're still going to go because it's now scheduled. So motivation just means that you're building a bit of momentum.
Yeah. I think 90 days is a good way of seeing, like, maybe whatever one of the things you've just said, whether that be running, gym, or a habit or an addiction like drinking or smoking, after 90 days you will either reap the benefits or the negative aspects of it. Like, obviously, if you're drinking for 90 days straight, you will just be fucked by the end of it. If you're if you're going to the gym for 90 days straight, you'll see a physical and mental difference.
And a lot of people don't stick it out, because a lot of people in this day and age are not consistent, because they do something for the first 28 days or the first 35 days, which will only get you to the motivation benchmark. But motivation, you can feel anyway. It's just a temporary feeling. Discipline, that's still not enough. People think, oh yeah, I've got to be disciplined. It's still questionable. You still question yourself when you've got to be disciplined. Oh well, I can't have that because I've got to be disciplined. When it becomes culture, you wouldn't even question it. You just wouldn't. It wouldn't enter your primal thinking.
I think that's a really good bit of actionable takeaway for anyone who's listening. Is that, we actually had this call yesterday. We did. So I'm pretty hot on the topic. But I said this to you yesterday, that in the month of October, I was like, right, I'm going to get up at the same time every single day. I'm going to go on a walk, and I'm going to do it for a month straight to prove to myself that I can do it for a month. And I did. I did it for a month straight. And then on the 1st of November, I had a lie-in. and I thought, you know what, I've just done this for 28 days, so I know that I can do it. But after the call that we had yesterday, it's that 28 days, it's not enough. That if you want to really build something into yourself and make it part of your culture and who you are, you're looking at 90. So if there is anyone who is listening to this who's looking to start something new, we've sentenced you to 90 days of whatever you want to do.
Honestly, this is God's take on it. If you do something consecutively for 90 days straight, you cannot fail. You cannot, because it's programmed into your nervous system then. So you'll do it on automation. You'll start to do it. You'll start to feel weird if you don't do it. But just make sure you're doing the right thing, not the wrong thing for 90 days.
I know that a lot of your work with mindset kind of ties into quite a spiritual side of things as well. I know that you're quite spiritual yourself, but I was wondering, are you religious?
Well, I was a born Christian, but I don't go to church every Sunday, if that's what you mean. But I've sort of found my own thing. And I know spirituality can be a big word to people. Religion can be a big word to some people. So I just like to simplify it. I am spiritual. I do believe that, there's certain things and certain energies and frequencies and vibrations that we can tap into through emotion, through feeling, through visualization, because when we think of things, even thoughts can make our emotions feel different for that moment. So I'm a big believer of spirituality, and that works for me. It's always worked for me to a certain level, and I think sometimes how things work out when you think, well, I thought I was going down a different path, and then how things magically sort of work out. I know there's something that governs that, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Something that I want to put a bit more emphasis on as well is that I know that you know the coaching that I've had with you is amazing, and you've got a lot to offer.
Thank you for that.
What are some, you know, low cost or free exercises or resources or pieces of advice that you have to people who are watching this who might not be able to afford a coach or a mentor, but what are some low cost resources? Good
question. And the reason why, look, we could get our phone out right now, we could type into YouTube mindset or self-development or mentor, and I guarantee probably Tony Robbins will be the first one that comes up, and a few of the guys, Jim Rohn, everyone else, Earl Nightingale's a good one. The internet is full of them. But why people don't do them? It's because they're free, so they don't add any value to it. And I always say, if you don't pay, you're not going to pay attention. So to be accountable to yourself, if you don't have a mentor, go and pay for a course or a program that's going to sort out your internal first, right? Because a lot of people, what they try and do is sort out the external without dealing with the internal first. Because if the external is not going the way you want it, or you don't have a plan for the external, it's because you have an internal blockage, and you need to deal with that first. And that's first and foremost. That's a prerequisite. Go and get a bit of money together, whatever you do. If you go out, you know, you have to wash windows, wash cars, whatever, and pay for a course or pay for a mentor, pay for something where you're going to show up. Because if you sign up to a registration page online and it says, right, we've got a free workshop coming up in 10 days, you're just not going to go. You're not going to attend. And that's what I see with a lot of people. And, you know, I've had people reach out to me. I've given them a coaching call. 9 out of 10 people don't turn up, you know, and it's not a coaching call. It's just a chat. It's just a chat to say, you know, would you benefit from maybe Mindset University? Would you benefit working with us and our team? Probably not. Probably yes. A lot of people don't even turn up. Yeah. So they're not serious about change. When I'm serious about change, you'll turn up. I wanted to box. I went to the gym. I turned up. Yeah. I got kept accountable through that. At university, you turn up. People turn up to university because they've paid for it. It's not because it's free. So go and put some money down, pay attention, and they'll turn up.
I think that was one of the hard things. So when we had that first call in November, you know, I wanted to work with you. Yeah. And I just did not have the money. So, but there were probably ways that I could have got the money. Yeah. But for, you know, people of our age especially, who might, you know, they might be at university, they might be, you know, chasing their student loan every week to try and pay their rent. Of course. What are something other than trying to get a coach?
Start reading. Start listening to podcasts, watch a few YouTube videos, and start from there, you know.
And what would you do with those resources? Would you, you know, not just reading them, but really studying them?
Yeah, so, you know, don't just listen to it as you're walking down the road, or listen to it when you're having a three-way conversation with someone. Take a bit of time for you, whether that's in the morning. If you say you haven't got any time in the day because you're busy, get up at 6 o'clock then, where you've got an hour to yourself. Sit down, get a glass of water or a cup of coffee, get your notepad out, start taking some notes, and just start. Just start to do something. Like, something is going to be better than nothing. We all know that. It's like the gym. Yeah. How many people have you probably come across, Jake, who's saying, well, I want to start the gym, and then 6 months time they're still saying the same thing?
Yeah, it's kind of a reoccurring thing, isn't it?
Get yourself in there. Just throw yourself in that environment. Throw yourself in. Don't worry about the how. The how will come. Yeah. The how will work itself out. You guys didn't know how to run a podcast, but you threw yourselves in and you've learned how, and the how's worked itself out. We sat here now running a podcast. Yeah. Because you've put yourself in that environment.
I feel like with stuff like that as well, especially whether it be gym or anything that you're working on, you have to do something consistently, see no results, and still kind of stick to it before you then see results and they pay off.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues with today's society. People want instant gratification. They want it now. Usually, anything that comes quick usually goes quick anyway. Yeah. Something that you've had to develop and work for over a long period of time, it will stay with you for a long period of time. And that's the magic of it.
So going back to what you said a minute ago about podcasts and books being a really low cost way to start. Yeah. Are there any podcasts aside from Progress with Us that you would recommend, or any books as well off the top of your head?
It's all critique to style and who you're going to listen to. Something has to resonate. Like, I could say something on this podcast, someone would probably say, oh, that's a load of shit, that's a load of rubbish he's talking about. Fair enough. Someone else might listen to that and say, wow, that resonates with me. I said the same thing, but someone else heard it different to the other person. So you've really got to go and just listen to a few different people and see what resonates, because a lot of it is the same or similar content. It's just explained in a different format or a different way or a different etiquette, so people are going to pick up on that differently.
For sure. Like, I'm a massive fan of Chris Williamson's podcast, Modern Wisdom.
Yeah.
And that is literally just because he's British and he's just more relatable. And some of the things that he talks about, he's talking about English culture and university and whatever, and you just feel like you can relate to him more because you feel like he's come from, and I think that's exactly right. And books. What about books?
Books. Look, if you're a first-time reader, don't go out and buy a 1,000-page book because you're not going to read it. All right? Go and buy a small book that you're very interested in, that you're passionate about, that's something of interest to you specifically, and what's going to resonate to maybe a circumstance now or in the future, and set yourself to read 2-3 pages a night, and you'll do it.
Yeah.
For myself, I read a chapter a book a night. I don't say I'm going to read a book in 2 days or whatever. I don't, because I'm not going to do that. I know I'm not going to do that. But I'll read a chapter a night, and I'll build it in as culture. So every night before bed, I will read a chapter a night. It gets done. So anybody out there, get a book you can resonate with. Don't go out and buy 1,000-page books. You're never going to read it. You're never going to finish it. And start there. Just start small steps. Small steps equal great distances, just like Jim Rohn said. And it's so true. Compound Effect, Darren Hardy. Great book for anybody to start with.
Yeah, I would actually probably say that would be the one that springs to mind, the one that you've got me to read, because it's 150 pages, and it's, the language in it isn't too complicated. It gives some really good examples of what you were talking about earlier, as you can either go down the red path or the green path with habits. And in the book, in the introduction, it takes the example of 3 blokes, and they're all at the same place at the start. One of them doesn't change anything. One of them just starts to let his diet slip a bit more. I think in the book it gives the example that he starts eating just a few hundred calories extra a day. And he starts just having that one drink after work, and the other friend starts going to the gym and starts doing some self-development for an hour every day. And then it gives the example of, in 3 months there's not much difference. In 6 months it's not that much difference, it's kind of noticeable. One of the dude on the diet's looking a bit bigger now. And then in 12 months it's like, right,
big change. Something's
happening here. And then in 2 years, he's lost his job, he's a millionaire, and the other dude's still in the same place.
There you go. And it's like this. So from me, I speak to a lot of CEOs, and one thing I've seen is one struggle in companies right now is they are finding it very difficult to retain top talent or even attract top talent. Don't forget, subconsciously, we make decisions without even knowing. Subconsciously, we are governed by our subconscious mind, which runs and operates 95% of what we do anyway. So it navigates to what we're doing, maybe tries to keep you safe or weighs things up in a different light compared to your conscious, which is only 5%, right? So one of the things I say to CEOs is, do you think right now you are in your optimal health and optimal well-being as much as you should or could be? And if the answer is no, they are usually struggling in that company to, retain and grow top talent. And I said to them, subconsciously, when people see who you are and they think, if this person does not look after himself, what on earth makes him think that he's got the best interest for me? I.e., let's go to someone else, another company that we work with, and the CEO's in great shape, optimal health. Subconsciously, we can pick up who's in good health. That's one of our subconscious mechanisms that we do. That's what humans are attracted to. Humans are attracted to other humans who are healthy. It's just an instinctual process from our subconscious. And what happened with that CEO, he was attracting top talent and growing his company through the best part of people, because when people looked at him, even though they might not be conscious of it, because they looked at that particular CEO and he's in great shape and he looks well and he's got great well-being, they thought, if he looks after himself, he's going to look after us. There you go. It's quite simple.
This has been amazing speaking to you. What's next for you? Any big plans? Any other businesses?
Yes, I've currently got a massive project going on with our wellbeing project that we're doing, working with businesses. So that's very exciting. Also very exciting growing the Mindset platform, the Mindset University as well. So again, it's getting very popular. We're having a lot of outreach, people inquiring, people contacting us, and people wanting to know, what else they've got to give. And I think what is the most upsetting part to anybody's life is never knowing or reaching their potential. So always work towards your potential. Never settle. Never go for the easy option. Always go for something that's difficult, even if you have to go through hardship. Yeah. Because going through the hardship, it's gonna, you're gonna mold into the person that you need to become to get to where you want to be eventually. Anyway, that's my advice.
Incredible way of putting it. And
David Goggins said that hell is when the person you are meets the person who you could have been.
Yeah. Again, all these guys I've met, I've met a lot of people over my time, through sport. I've met Grant Cardone in person. Yeah, very good character, entertaining, amazing.
Didn't he ask you if you had a jet?
Yeah, he said. Yeah, what did he say now? He said, how many jets do you own? And I was like, what? And I didn't know what to say. But anyway, that's another conversation. Gary V, great person if you're into content. Look at Gary V's work. I've met Gary V as well personally. Great guy. Grant Cardone. I've met Tony Robbins. I've met a lot of guys, and it's who you're gonna gravitate to, and who can, what nuggets are you gonna take from that? So absolutely, yeah. It's been a pleasure, guys. Honestly,
where can people find you and your work?
Lee Duncan. Type in Lee Duncan online and just see if my page or any of my socials give you a little bit of value, and if they do, then feel free to reach out, follow, connect, drop me a message. Pretty easy to reach these days. Anybody's easy to reach, aren't they? So
yeah,
absolutely.
It's been great to have you on.
Yeah,
been a pleasure, bro.
I've been looking forward to this one for a while. I've seen it in back.
Love it.
Quality.
Go on, man. Boom.